Welcome, everyone. Hope you're having a great Tuesday so far. My name is Meg. I am a Power to Fly virtual host and moderator. Super excited to be joining you today and kicking off this amazing chat with Melissa from Netskope. Before we get started, I just want to highlight a couple things for y'all in our housekeeping slide. So if you're new to Bevy or if you are just far more familiar with Zoom, a couple things are going to be different. You can't come off mute or show us your lovely faces in the video area, but you can still participate. So please feel free to chat with your fellow attendees in the general tab. If you click over into the Q&A bucket, you can add your own questions there, so I can take a look and see what all of y'all want to know most from Melissa today. You can also upvote questions there. So if somebody else has asked something that you would really like to know the answer to, make sure that you give it a thumbs up, and that way I can tell what questions are more popular and more people want to know about. Today's session is being recorded, so please feel free to, whether you join us for 5 minutes or the full 60, or if you're watching this from the future because you couldn't join us today, everyone that registered is going to get a link in their email in about 1 to 2 business days, and it'll have the link to where you can rewatch this recording. It'll be hosted on our website. You can also find it on our Power to Fly YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So you can follow us on all those various social channels. And let's see, if you have any other questions, please feel free to DM me. And let's just get right started and get jumped in already. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit more about Netskope. I'm going to put a link to the chat here, or I'll put a link in the chat here in just a moment. But one thing you're going to find out is if you follow that link that I'm going to send you, it's going to take you to this page. It's Netskope's company page on powertofly.com. Once you're here, you can check out more information about the company. You can click on the events tab to find out great events that they either have participated in with us or are going to participate in the future. Things like these chat and learns, our mini summits every month, or our virtual job fairs. So definitely check that out. You can also click on the next tab that's going to lead you to open roles. As you can see, they have 400 roles posted with us currently. The great thing about those open jobs is if you go through and review that and see that there's just not really anything that really interests you, but you are very keen to keep learning about Netskope and want to stay on their radar, at the top of this page on the right-hand side is going to be a big pink button that says follow. Make sure you click that. Not only will it put you on, the Netskope HR team's radar, but it's also going to do you a couple favors in that it's going to keep you updated when they post new roles or they're going to have take part in new events. So definitely check that out. It's a really great way to kind of make sure that you stand head and shoulders above other applicants, as well as making sure that you don't have to keep coming back and checking job boards that sometimes feel like they never really change. So definitely take advantage of that. Like I said, I'm going to share that link here in the chat right now. I'm going to put that in the general chat for everybody. So then, as we go further on today's chat, I want to really introduce you to this amazing person joining us from the Netskope team. Melissa maintains nearly 2 decades of experience managing highly successful teams while building and executing partner marketing strategies within the cybersecurity and IT industry. She's a recognized advocate and frequent speaker on the topics of women in tech and inclusion, equity, and diversity. So welcome, Melissa.
Meg, thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here with the Power to Fly organization representing Netskope and to talk a little bit about, really the power of advocacy, the power of community, as well as the power of self-promotion. And I know we received a lot of questions around that topic. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate across these topics is because when I take a step back and look at my career, I feel like these 3 areas were really the most impactful. They really either guided my journey or boosted my career. I'll give you a little bit of background of kind of where I started and how I got here. I started working in local government. I was a political science major. I was going to go to law school, and that is the path. That's the journey that I was on, kind of with blinders on, not recognizing all that the world had to offer. And my boss at the time went to lunch with a local business person who happened to be in the tech field. That local business person said, I'm looking to hire somebody in our marketing department to, head up corporate communications for us. And my boss at the time said, well, I have this person, She's an excellent writer. She's a fast learner, and she has zero experience in the tech space. But it got my foot in the door. I got the interview. I got the job. So talk about just a complete change of journey that I would have never even known was out there if somebody else hadn't advocated on my behalf and really on behalf of my work. So it is really one of the areas that I'm so passionate about. And then just over a decade, I have been so fortunate to have an amazing tribe of women around me across a number of different companies. And it makes a difference. It's made me a better professional. It has made work more rewarding. And that, women building up women, we should talk about it. And it is so powerful across the board. So I'm really looking forward to getting to everybody's questions today. If you have more, certainly put them in the chat. And I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. So before we jump into the questions, I just want to highlight for all of you some of the principal themes that we're going to try and cover in today's conversations. The first is going beyond the mentor, how and why to identify those influencers. Women helping women, as Melissa just said, how we can help raise each other up, and being your own advocate, which I know can be a very challenging thing for a lot of people. So to get us started with, To get us started with our first question, we did have a bunch of questions that y'all had pre-submitted, so we've taken a look at all those, removed redundant questions, and kind of tried to arrange them into a conversational format. Now, if you submitted a question, but you aren't sure we're going to answer it, please feel free to add it to the Q&A bucket. I'll be monitoring that as we go, and hopefully we will cover all the things that y'all want to know about. So to get us started, we had this question that came in I thought was pretty interesting. This person wanted to know, what would be your definition of self-promotion? And I find that this is, I kind of saw this as twofold, right? I saw this as a question both asking how you can really promote yourself, but also maybe how to stray away from, how to make sure that you're kind of drawing a line between like self-promoting and maybe that either bragging or overstating where you're coming from, right? So tell me, how you saw this question.
Great question. And it's one of those areas that it can be tough. And there's also a fine line. So I define self-promotion as, I use those words in this context of really spotlighting your work. So how are more people understanding what you're doing and aware of that? It's funny, I was sharing with my husband that I was going to be joining on this chat and talking to him about some of the topics that we're discussing today. And him and I actually disagree. He comes from the school of thought, tenacity, hard work, great work product, they kind of stand on their own. And that's a nice concept to believe in, but I disagree. How are other people supposed to see all of the greatness if we're not sharing that? But there's a lot of different ways we can do that, instead of being the person that's saying, hey, look at me, but really framing it in, look at my work. We've accomplished this. And there's so many other elements to that. But I think if we frame it in the definition of, how am I promoting the work that I'm doing? That also takes out some of this, I'm uncomfortable to do that. I don't really want to do that. It sounds like I'm bragging. Am I taking credit for somebody else's work? No, we're talking about the body of work that we're doing. And regardless of what industry you're in, this is certainly applicable. So I definitely think about it in that frame.
A lot of people talking in the chat here. Joan is saying that I've had a tough time until very recently advocating for myself in the workplace. Non-supporters over the past years have been female managers and supervisors, and great work just wasn't enough. Jamie's also saying that she's also been nervous about networking and promoting, but this community has really helped her gain the courage to put herself out there. Joan, I feel for you. I've unfortunately, up until this company, I'd only had one female manager or supervisor, and it was a horrible experience. But at least I had the luxury of knowing that, like, not everybody's like that. Not all, not all managers are cut from the same cloth. And so it was really, that was helpful for me to kind of treat it as an experience where I could learn what I didn't want to do when I was in a position of being able to, be in charge of somebody else. Yeah. So thank you so much, Melissa, for talking about that. To go to our next question, this person wanted to know, can you share some good examples of simple promotion tasks that we can do? So how would you put this into practice?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways. As I think about it, the easiest way, if you were working on a project, say that has a lot of milestones, you can do things like weekly updates. This also helps if you're a little nervous or you're not sure if you want to, be that person that's always self-promoting because you're framing it within the project and these are the milestones. That may sound like, well, shouldn't I be updating others on my work anyway? But what you're able to do is to drill into some of the things that you're working on so people understand the work that you're doing and the success that you're having and how it's impacting the business or your organization. So I am definitely a big fan of over communicating in that way, which serves two purposes. One, increasing and enhancing communications, which is so critical. Two, you're getting to promote yourself and your work. So definitely those kind of project updates. One of the things that I like to do and that I've also shared with my team is keep a running list of the things that you do. How often do you take a look back, or sometimes you look at the files that you've done and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm pretty amazing. I did all of this stuff, but you forget about it. So a good best practice is keep a running list. Maybe you do a monthly or a quarterly. Hey, take a look at all of these things that we accomplished. And again, it's more of an update, but it certainly is serving the purpose of having you promote yourself and having you promote your work. And also being able to share maybe outside of just your boss or your direct boss or your team, but you're being able to really share that with a broader team, broader organization, increasing your visibility. The last piece, it always makes me laugh. So for those of you that maybe have worked in larger organizations where you have like mid-year and end-of-year reviews, I've been a manager for a number of years and I see two sides of the spectrum. The people that rush through it, it's like a task, like, oh my gosh, the year-end reviews are up and they rush through and they put a few sentences. Or on the flip side, it's like a laundry list of every file of everything you've ever worked on, which is also really difficult as a manager to get through. But this is your chance. So if you have that available in your organization, if you do some more type of a formal review process, I take that seriously. Think about what you want to write, what you want to spotlight. It's not too little and it's not too much, but that's definitely another way that I really think is underutilized for those of us that work in companies that have that opportunity to do that.
I love that idea. I got told by a previous manager, when you get good feedback or a really great email response or thank you or something from somebody for work that you did, she recommended that you create a kudos folder and either save it to that folder or like send yourself a copy of that to that and you can I think I have an auto sort in my email, so I just forward it to myself and that way I already have a copy of it where I want it. So I love the idea of keeping track of your achievements, because is this something that you would recommend, like practicing how to talk about it? Because for me, one of the things that I struggle with is, especially, I know that this is not something unique to me, but a lot of women, especially professional women, we struggle with kind of undercutting ourselves. So like just checking in, or I'm only asking blah, blah, blah. So is this something that would benefit from practicing how you're going to say it, as opposed to just keeping a running list and kind of hoping that off the cuff you'll be able to say it the way you want? For me at least, I feel like you run that risk, right? You don't want to claim sole ownership of a specific project, especially if you worked on a team, but you also don't want to undercut what you brought to that team, right?
Yeah, it's about framing it. So what, kind of a running list helps you remember, but if you're going to be sharing that, and we just talked about this recently on my team too, if we're going to share this upwards, if we're going to manage up, how do we make sure that we frame that? We give credit where credit is due. We give kudos to other people. We talk and we frame things, because as a one-off, if you're sitting at a senior executive level, what somebody else is working on may not be on your radar. So it's really important to frame things too. What are we talking about here? What are we doing? Why do we do it? What are the outcomes we're driving to? What are the things that we did that we claim as, that are successful? I really think that that's important to frame things. And then also, I see it all the time where it is a lot of people, hey, and this person, we have a member of our team who just did amazing graphic design work as part of a larger project. She was a huge contributor because that is the brand of this new project going forward. So I think if you're doing those things and recognition that your own self-promotion doesn't always have to be all about you. You can raise everybody up at the same time. But Meg, I have to tell you that I need to rename my folder the kudos folder. When I started my career, I just told my team to do this. When I started my career, my first manager told me, and this is so long ago, to write it. We had folders, like actual folders in the office, and it was called the Attaboy folder, which is, I need to call it the Attagirl folder, but it was just what she said to me at the time so many years ago. And I absolutely recommend doing that. For me, I've even asked my team to make sure they forward those to me because I want to see them too. And somebody, a member of my team just recently forwarded something and said, this feels so weird because it's completely complimenting their work. And I said, why would that feel weird? I love seeing this. This is amazing. So I love that. It helps also just to remind you how great you are. If you're having a bad day, if something is not going right, Joan, you're saying, somebody may not be recognizing all of your amazing work. I love that idea. And these are things that are also 100% in your control. You can implement right now. Other things take, you have to work on them. And how do I do those? But these are little things right now.
I love the different terminology people are using. I picked kudos because nobody really says that casually in emails anymore. So it was easy to make sure that my filter was set correctly. Christina actually has a really good question on this, and obviously it's going to change. What you highlight depends on who you're talking to about this, like who your audience is. Christina is asking, when sharing wins or achievements with upper management, do you recommend sharing the financial impact, or are there other results metrics that you find resonate best?
Yeah, so I know that, so I work in obviously security for Netskope, and I've been in this industry for a while. The results are very important, and I think it's understanding who your audience is. So in our field, it's how are you driving the business? So to Christina's question, it's the bottom line. How are we driving new customers and top of pipeline? These are the things that our senior management in this industry cares about. I would definitely think about what that senior management cares about within your organization. I'm in marketing, so we have all sorts of metrics. We sometimes joke and call them vanity metrics because we care about them and they're very important to us, and they're important to us to make good business decisions. But if we were to put all of those things in front of a really senior executive, is that what they're caring about? Because the bottom line is, how did this drive the results for the business? And that's, again, in this industry. So Christina, I do think it's helpful to filter what our executives, or what the executives for whatever organization you are, care about most. My brothers are teachers, things like graduation rates, test scores, these are the things that, attendance rates, those are the things that the school district and their principal is looking at. So it definitely makes difference. It doesn't mean you don't look at those other metrics. I look at a ton of different things, but what is the most relevant? Again, if you put yourself in their shoes, that senior level executive is presiding over so many different departments and so many different things. So we really need to be crisp when we're communicating with them, to, again, frame what we're talking about. Just because we're living this doesn't mean they are. Why are we doing it? Why is it important? What do we think that the business is going to, the benefit to the business? And then some of those, really some of those business metrics. I will just say it doesn't always have to be, because there are additional things that, at least in this field, that we drive that have a longer term impact. And I do think that those are okay too. So I don't think you have to force it, but I would just kind of put ourselves in their shoes.
Okay, so kind of piggybacking off of that idea, how do you know when too much self-promotion or self-advocating is too much? I feel like that can be, sometimes, at least for me, it's so hard to kind of work up that self-confidence or that courage to talk about these kinds of things that it feels a little bit like maybe you're now running downhill and it's a little hard to stop yourself and maybe rein it in. So how can are there some like social cues to know about? Maybe like stick with 3 things and then stop. Like how do you navigate that?
Yeah. It's a tough question because there's no one good answer, and you don't want to be that person either. You don't want to be that person that's oversharing. I think about it again, if you have something that's more of a project or initiative and you're doing certain updates and that's every week, that could be appropriate. I think about the kind of more, I'll call marquee events or big things that, of course, they are appropriate. And then for the other stuff, it's just about being self-aware. So I think, Meg, you're like you said, you're like, I don't want to do this. It's being self-aware. Am I just running this up the flagpole every little thing, or am I really sharing to spotlight my work, to make sure that there's awareness there appropriately? So it definitely is a balancing act. And I feel like it comes in peaks and valleys. You might happen to be working on some things that all of a sudden, they all kind of pop at once. So there's a few different opportunities, and then maybe there's a little bit of a plateau, and that's okay too. So I don't think I answered the question entirely, but it's definitely perspective. Be self-aware, put things into perspective. But I wouldn't also hold back if you know and believe it's relevant just because, oh, I just sent this to the team, 2 days ago. I can't send something, right now. And I definitely like to sprinkle in, I'll call it the small win. It's easier to frame things up when it's like a big project, a big win, and everybody's working on it and everybody's focused on it. In marketing, usually that comes with sometimes big events or big product launches. But what about the smaller victories that you want to kind of sprinkle in that also collectively add up to really great business success? So I always think that through too. Is there 1 or 2 good examples where you could forward it out? And that's another tactic I love, when you could just forward what somebody else says. And for those of you that said, hey, I'm shy, I'm kind of uncomfortable, almost just a little bit of a forward, like, hey, FYI, you didn't even have to say anything. Somebody else said it for you. So that's always a great position to be in.
Would this be, the idea of like forwarding on or kind of allowing somebody else to really do that praising? Would that be good advice, especially for people who are just really, really shy, that really struggle to do this?
So yes, absolutely. So if you're very shy, depending on what industry you're in, and especially since everybody's virtual right now, email could be a good option for you. You have the time to think through what you want to write, what you want to say, how you want to frame it, so you're comfortable with that. And you're also not having to do that in a more public fashion. So that definitely can be a good tactic for people that are shy or maybe a little bit uncomfortable. But I will say that if you're self-aware and you're saying, hey, I'm a little bit shy, I may not be able to do this, that's also a good area maybe to focus for professional growth. I remember that I had a phenomenal professional on my team a few years back, did amazing work, but anytime it would come to presenting or leading the meeting, she would leave it up to me. She wasn't comfortable doing that at all. And that was okay for a little bit of time, but we needed to push her out of her comfort zone, and we did. And fast forward, she's leading a team, she's like running the world. So it's also a good way to think about your own personal growth and evolution, while also using the things now that you're more comfortable with. But I always think that there's opportunity for people to learn and to grow and to move out of your comfort zone and kind of spread your wings.
I love that idea. Okay, so there's another question that I can see is getting a little bit of love in the Q&A bucket. So definitely check out the questions that I have in place over there. Those are just kind of a smattering of the questions that were pre-submitted by y'all. So definitely check those out. If there's any that really interest you, make sure to give them a thumbs up. And that way we can try and touch on them sooner rather than later. So this question is, this person wanted to know, they want to know more about career boosters. What are they and how can you really recognize them in the moment?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of career boosters that are out there and can come up at any time. For me, and for this session, when I was thinking about this, it really did come down to kind of a top three, which was advocacy. The people that are going to spotlight your work, that they're going to say nice things about you when you're not in the room, or they have a seat at a different table than you do. Those advocates can come in so many shapes and forms. It doesn't always need to be maybe your boss or somebody. It could be somebody, your coworker. They happen to be doing different things and they're advocating and they're saying things on your behalf, where you're not running in that circle. Doesn't always need to be higher up. It's just the circles that you run in. And I gave the one example of how I got started in technology, but I feel like every step of the way, there's been an advocate in my corner that has helped me, whether it's land a new job or to get promoted. So for me, that is definitely one of the things that I think about when you say a career booster. Again, in my journey, so there's probably tons of others. The power of the community is another one. Like I said, for probably the past decade, I've had an amazing tribe that just keeps growing. So with every company, we just get to keep adding to it. Here at Netskope, we have an employee networking group, the Awesome Women of Netskope. So if you don't want to join this company just for that name alone, I was immediately drawn to it. But that community of support, it could be career advice. It could be kind of work-life balance. It could be, I think Jamie wrote, friends just have this while you're going. To be surrounded by that community, to learn from others, and really to have that environment where you're lifting each other up. And I think somebody else put, there are some environments where, unfortunately, we still see females kind of tearing each other down. So when you can work in an environment to have that community, to me, that's a career booster. Just to be surrounded by strong and powerful women that we can learn and grow from every day. And then we talked a lot about self promotion, which I think is, to me, again, these career boosters. I also think about within that self promotion, I would say it's not leaving things up to chance. So when I was thinking about this session and almost like doing kind of the mental, mental trip down memory lane of my career, there was a time where I was an individual contributor. I was up for a promotion to lead the team. I was named as like the interim lead at the time, but by no means was this a slam dunk. There was hundreds and hundreds of applications. And obviously I went through the interview process, but I remember I sat my boss at the time down and I shared not only like the interview, but that I wanted the job. I was passionate about the job. I wanted to work for him on his team and I knew I could do it. So when you think about that, you think, not leaving things up to chance, being, it kind of falls into that category of self-promotion and everything, but going that extra mile too. And getting back to your amazing work doesn't always shine through. So how do we kind of toot our own horns a little bit more?
Yeah, I feel like that's a really important message to highlight, right? People don't necessarily know what you've got planned or what you would like to achieve. You might see it as a very natural next step, but that doesn't mean anybody else understands that. So even if if it ends up that you are telling this person something they already know, that's fine. But at least, you're not going to get anywhere if nobody knows that you have plans to move beyond the position you're in now. Joan is in the chat saying that her advocates have been more on LinkedIn than any other employer. Jamie's also saying, I found that being an advocate for others has helped me to develop a great network. It can help to break the ice with people when I'm not talking about myself. Later on, it gives me the opportunity to speak more comfortably about my accomplishments without the pressure of those first-time conversations. I think that's a really good point.
I love that. And again, that advocacy, it's not, hey, I have this person who's in a more senior position than me and I need them to advocate. All of us can be advocates for so many different people, because think about it, you know, again, back to the circles that we run in, so to speak, and how do we share what other people are doing? It all ties in so nicely together. Being an advocate, having an amazing community, and really the self-promotion part is about making sure that you're getting recognition for your work and others know about it. So that just ties perfectly together for, you know, to progress forward. And I love it. I love being able to advocate for other people. Two of my amazing, you know, former teammates, they both got promoted like at the same day. I was so proud of them. So all of this just helps us on our journey.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of people, you know, really loving what you're saying in the comments here. I want to make sure we touch on the idea of like women uplifting other women. But before we jump into that, before we leave this topic, Marcia had wanted to know, how can you get people in other parts of the organization to know what you're doing? She says, I report to my direct boss, but they won't want me to be writing to all kinds of other people.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a sticky situation, because you don't want to send email out to the broader team or to talk about that. Again, I've been fortunate to have amazing bosses who you kind of put people on a pedestal. But if there's things that you're working on where there's other people, that could be, you know, an avenue where somebody else is sending out an update for things and they're including you to do that. It could be asking for the opportunity. So maybe for, you know, for your direct manager, that's just not, you know, how they've normally managed, and asking for the opportunity. Can I present my work on the call? Can I be a part of that? So that may be helpful to even just ask the question, ask for the opportunity. I think leveraging, you know, others too. But it sounds like it may be, again, you want to be respectful of your manager, of your boss. I think probably asking might be the best path, but also thinking about how are there other people that you can talk to that would have the same, basically, you know, outcomes there for you.
Things that have worked for me in the past, I've been in similar situation, has been either like if I learned how to do something or somebody helped project, especially one of these people that I want to let know about it. Even if all they did was teach me like the building blocks, I've sent a thank you and just been like, hey, I had this great win the other day, and it's all, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't learned from you how to do blah, 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 or you hadn't helped me figure out a faster way to tackle this other project. Another thing that I've found is really great. This one depends a little bit more on you having the forethought of like, this is where I want to go, or I want to move to this department or something. I've raised it in an example of saying, hey, you know, this is stuff that I've been working on currently, and it's where I'm getting to like flex a lot of my skills and learn new things. Is this the direction that would really help me in like making myself a great candidate to join your team later? And position it as a question and see that way if it's like, yeah, this is great, but we, you know, really would like to see more customer facing work or something like that. At least, granted, those are kind of specific situations, not everybody's going to be in them, but they're just things that I've found in the past that have worked. Okay, so we have a lot of people in the question section that want to talk about mentorship, right? So one of the questions here was asking, how do we build a relationship with a potential mentor? And I feel like this is not only like the idea of building that relationship, but also identifying the person who could be a good mentor is, it's one of our most frequently asked questions, definitely. So what are your...
Sure. It's actually one of the questions we're discussing right now, because we've just launched a mentorship program. So the goal is to map and match, you know, people who are looking for a mentor with people who volunteer to be a mentor. Now, that is a tall task, because to your point, how do I really pick that? How do we understand? We started thinking about it and I think for everybody, you know, what are your career goals? What and it makes a difference to understand that, because that's going to help you. Do you want to move up the ladder? Do you want to move into different departments? Do you want to start a different career? What are the topical areas? And what I mean is, I have had a mentorship relationship where the person was in a completely different, business unit than I was in. But what she was looking for was really how to work more cross-functionally, how to communicate better. So these are things I can help with. Her specific job, no, she was an engineer. No, I couldn't guide her there. So when we think about it, what is that career goal? What are the topics? Is there somebody? And then it helps you to frame, what is the type of person, and who is that? Do you want somebody that has already charted that path forward? So you can say, teach me. You've already lived this. I want to help there. Is it something, again, around, is it communications? Is it around presentation? And there's somebody that has amazing skill set. You're like, I admire that person so much. Can you mentor me in this area? So if you break it down that way versus, and to me, you could have a lot of mentors too, not a lot, but you could have more than one. So I feel like when we think about this, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, like, who's your mentor? And I have a few, because there's different people that can help guide your career path, help you make decisions for you, for your career, for your family. Like, all of these are important, considerations. So if you really just taking that step to think about, what do I want out of this relationship, is really helpful. And by the way, it helps the mentor too, because now they know these are your aspirational goals. This is the journey that you want to take. Here's the areas where you want to, continue to learn and grow as a professional, and how can they help you? Versus being a bit more obtuse, like, hi, can you help me? Well, with what?
I love that idea, and really looking in terms of creating a relationship, right? Not just, here's what I need, can you give this to me? Coming at this from a perspective of, this is a person that you are interested in, you think that they have achieved some really awesome things, and you want to know how they did that. And that's great, but it also helps to position it as, I have a lot of admiration for the path that you've kind of blazed in your career, and I'm trying to follow the same thing. Like, would you be open to help, don't even hedge it. Would you be open to mentoring me, because I really want to follow in those same footsteps, or I want to keep, expanding the reach of women in this industry, or whatever. Kimberly's in the chat saying, one very important thing I consider helps self-advocacy is really believing in what you have achieved, and that it's something, she says, it's something that she used to struggle with, just like she, to say, like, I just do the job, no big deal. So it's really meaningful to believe it ourselves if there's no other people that recognize this. Although obviously having at least one person advocate for you is always a bonus. I don't know.
I want to bring that up though, because it's funny. And I think especially as female, we seem to, heads down, we do the job, we did a great job, we move on, we do the next job. I worked for somebody who was, I would say, the king of making a big deal about things that we were doing, and they were. But to your point, I would have never thought to share some of the things that he did, and he did. He made a big deal of the smaller accomplishments too. And I do believe sometimes we underestimate ourselves, especially when you're, I'll call it a master of your trade. And you're like, of course I did this. This is my job. If you take a step back, or if you ask people outside of that, really what you're doing, people they might be in awe of that work. And we're just taking it for granted because you're like, yeah, this is what I did. This is what I do. So I love that point, and I think it's important for us to remember too, because there are little things that we do and we probably just overlook them, whereas they're worthy of a kudos.
Sure. I see there's a lot of people asking for more tips about mentorship. I've put a couple of links in the chat to where you can check out some of our past chats on mentorship. Lamore Bergman Gross, I think is her name. She's one of my coworkers, and she heads up our mentorship program with Power to Fly. I'm also going to drop the link for that. The mentorship program that we run is a little bit more geared towards the company. So if you have, if you work someplace that isn't maybe big enough to support its own, its own like internal mentorship program, or you are, kind of looking for that outreach, definitely check it out. And you could even float it to your, your supervisors or your HR, because it's a great way to get that mentorship program going without kind of putting a lot of burden on people at your own organization. So yeah, definitely check those out if you're interested. So let's jump to one of our next questions. This person wanted to know about, let's see, so once we, kind of try and build that relationship, do you recommend any kind of platforms for finding mentors or mentees once you've kind of geared yourself up for this? And if you do, if you do or if you don't, how do you kind of identify the correct type of mentor that you need?
Sure. Platforms, I don't have a good answer for that, but Power to Fly right here.com/mentorship. I think it's hard for me to kind of find somebody that you don't know or you've worked with or in some type of a capacity. But there are definitely, one of the platforms or organizations that I've followed or used in my past is leanin.org. So Sheryl Sandberg's organization, not for profit. And they have circles that you join. So there's smaller groups of people with, certain interests. So that's definitely a platform that I would recommend. If you haven't heard of it, you could bring it into your company, or you can also, again, join in what they've done. So that might be a good platform. And then for picking the right mentor, I think it comes back to, again, what are you looking to get out of that mentorship relationship? And identifying those areas will help you pick the right person for the right time. And again, throughout your career, to me, you may have a number of different mentors throughout the different phases of your career as well, as you grow, as you progress. So there may be different people in those aspects, but it really does come back to thinking about what are and so this really being self-aware too. So if you want to just get a promotion, that's easy. This is I want to climb the corporate ladder. That's a pretty easy one. But if you really want to say, I want to grow and learn in certain areas, and somebody who does it really well, admire, it doesn't have to be somebody that is, again, more senior to me, because it could be somebody that is, more even your peer, more junior, but they have this spark, they have this amazingness around them in this, and you're like, that is part of it. So it could be for that as well, as you think about what you really want to hone in on and focus on.
So to kind of turn this question a little bit backwards, someone else had asked, when being a mentor for a former coworker, what are some best practices I can keep in mind to advocate effectively for her? So it sounds like this person either doesn't work with this coworker anymore, or maybe it's not clear if you're still at the same company or if you are at different companies. But what are some things to keep in mind, especially if you are asked to be a mentor for another, a friend or a coworker?
Sure. I think it definitely comes back to helping to raise their profile. So if you have the opportunity to help to raise their profile, if you're within the same company, or a lot of times all of these industries are pretty small. So we definitely have kind of cross-pollination with a number of different companies, but the ability to spotlight, her work as her mentor, to really advocate for her, providing that exposure. And I kind of come back to, if you are working in even a mid-sized company and there's thousands of people, how do you stand out? And if you're helping somebody to do that, you have a voice, you have a seat at the table, you can help really spotlight that person's work, raise their profile, provide exposure, provide connections. I come back to, I think, giving people the ability to showcase their own work too. So if you're in that position and you're mentoring her as a former coworker, and you're there, do you have the ability to do that? I think if you're within a different organization, there's still, transferable skills and advice that you can really help to impart to that former coworker as they're progressing on their journey. And even with, I think somebody even wrote, like, whether that's on LinkedIn or on social, there's so many ways that we can help raise each other up, um, whether it's as a mentor or an advocate or just a member of a community.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's expand on that and talk a little bit more about LinkedIn, right? We had a couple different questions that dealt with this. People wanted to know things like, how do you add meaningful contacts to your LinkedIn network? There was also advice for growing your network during remote times, especially if you are the kind of person that prefers the personal touch, right? There's a lot of people that prefer, to sit down with somebody for a cup of coffee, or to have a little bit more traditional methods, as opposed to some of the things that we've seen crop up, especially during quarantine. So let's talk about that. How can you do these things digitally, especially if it's not maybe the method you prefer?
Yeah, it's tough. So again, I come from a big Italian family. I live in New York. Like, yes, the in-person connections. And then I think for all of us, as we've kind of grown up and formed relationships, those strongest relationships tend to happen because you've seen those people, and now everything is virtual. And especially if you're looking to expand your network, how do we just meet strangers and then all of a sudden form meaningful connections in this virtual world? So I'd start off by saying it's tough, and not preferable for so many of us. One of the things that did come out of everybody working from home and a global pandemic and forcing everything to go virtual is that there are a number of great, I would say, conferences that are now being hosted virtual. And the good thing about them is also now most of the time they're free. So this can be a good vehicle to say, is that, I get to learn, I get to grow, and I can expand my network. They're not all created equal. And I've been to a few virtual conferences. There was one in particular that did a really amazing job in that they actually broke people out into breakout rooms where you could actually talk. So you weren't kind of only a faceless, person sitting in listening to presentations. They really made it interactive. So that's one of the things that if I'm going to dedicate my time to something now, I really look at obviously the topics, obviously the speaker. How are we making more of those meaningful connections and to expand our network? And that particular conference was amazing because I actually got to sit and talk to people virtually in a Zoom breakout room. But whereas, again, in some of these others, you just don't. So I would say that is one way that I found that I actually find it valuable. I enjoy it. I was learning and engaging. So that is definitely one thing. And again, the positive side is there's a lot of these professional development conferences that had pretty high price tags, and now they're free. So that's definitely one way that I've been looking to continue to engage and connect and expand my network. I think just kind of cold LinkedIn contacts and how do you make those meaningful? That's more of a challenge because it could be in things like LinkedIn groups, but again, kind of back to the areas where there's more interaction and there's more engagement, because at least then you really are starting to get to know people versus just kind of admiring from afar or just saying, hey, I saw that person. So I think those are silver linings to a situation that I don't think any of us are in favor of here.
I think there's definitely a lot of people that, in certain ways, for specific things, want to go back to how things used to work, or at least have the option. One thing I can definitely recommend. We used to do a couple. You can also look out for these events elsewhere because we're not the only people that do them. But look for something called an ask and offer session. It's a really great way to feel like you're not just coming with a, I need help with blah, blah, blah. You can also volunteer like, hey, I'm really great with graphic design, so I can, help somebody with their logo or something, but I need help with, I don't even know, software, accounting software for my company or something like that. So it's a great way to kind of feel like you're being a little less gimme, but you can still make those connections with other people. We also hold networking events the morning of every one of our virtual mini summit days. So April 6th through the 9th is the next one, and we're going to have icebreaker sessions 6th, 7th, and 8th. I think they're at like 11 a.m. Eastern. So I'll share the link where you can check those out. But definitely, take advantage of, like Moses is saying, events like this that sometimes or generally are charged for, and that you can take advantage of, during now when you can take advantage of these things without having to pay that upfront cost. We only have 10 minutes left in our session. These always go way too quickly. So like I said, I did want to touch back on what you had talked about like kind of raising other women up. So this person had said, could you share could you share what kind of impact this idea has had on your life, and if it's based on an experience where other people and other women raised you up, or if this is kind of the opposite, where it's because you maybe didn't get the support that you would have liked earlier in your career.
I love this question. It's both. I have absolutely had phenomenal women that have helped raise me up. I kind of mentioned numerous times about my tribe that keeps expanding, and I love it. But there's also those people that, they're going to, raise you up, make a difference in your career. I have a female boss right now. I have worked for her in the past as well. She's actually one of the people that had advocated for me to take on an expanded responsibility into a global role. So when you think about people that, and also pushed me a little bit when I had some questions about that. So I definitely have those personal experiences of, individuals who have helped me, and I can point to those individuals. The community, that kind of community love, and like I said, over the past number of years, have just been so fortunate to be part of organizations where I had that. Whether that was the team that I was managing, my teammates across the board, people I met in the community, but it's also talking about it. So you might say, hey, this is great, but how are we making sure that we're talking about it? So we're just raising the bar, reminding ourselves to do that as well, because it's important. But it also comes from a place because I didn't always work in that environment. So if you don't work in that kind of environment, you know that it sucks. I call it the mean girls at work. It's just toxic. And you kind of think to yourself, like, why? What is going on here? And I would say, again, not only not raising you up, but almost trying to tear you down. So I've been there, so fortunate not to have been for a really long time, but it comes from both experiences. I'm happy that they happened in the order that they did as well. But if you're in that, one person can't kind of change the world, but you could certainly have an impact around kind of what I'll call your sphere of influence, or the people that are around you. And I do believe that each one of us can have that kind of an impact. So, if you're experiencing that, I am sorry for you right now, but you can have an impact on the others that are around you. And then for those that are within organizations and have a community, this is a community right here. When we first joined, and they're saying hello to Meg and thanks for having me again, and kind of you have this community. So it is these types of things, to me, help all of us. I believe that there's learning and growth at every turn from all sorts of people. But yeah, that for the Parks and Rec fans out there, kind of the ladies celebrating ladies, we had a Valentine's Day little celebration at Netskope, but it makes a difference. It makes a difference for your own personal and professional growth. It's powerful to just be able to sit in a room and just talk to other women. What are you going through? And I also, there's something to be said about, looking at somebody who's perhaps, 10 years ahead of you. Again, not necessarily talking about the work ladder, but if they've gone through things already, it's worth it to ask that question. There's questions about just in life in general. working moms, what does that feel like? Where all of these things that you can look to somebody and say, I see you've had that life experience. Can you tell me about it? We always say kind of for people in their 20s and 30s, just go ask somebody in their 40s or 50s because they've already lived that. And it might not be the exact same situation, but 9 times out of 10, it's pretty similar. So you can ask for people to help draw on their personal experiences and what they learned as well. So yeah, I'm all for the community.
I love to hear that. I love that you call it the mean girls kind of idea. I tend to call it the Highlander philosophy, where people act like there can only be one, like there can only be one woman on a team that's outstanding, or only one, woman in a department, as opposed to like, kind of opening that up and making room for other people. I've also been in situations where the mean girl idea was incredibly pervasive within the company. And it's hard, but my favorite method of it was either getting up and just walking away, because like, I don't need to be a part of this. And when questioned, I could say like, I don't need to be here. This is not, this isn't what I want to do. But the other way you can handle it is just by looking at that person and saying like, is there a reason you're cutting her down? Because her success does not negate yours. There's no reason not to support people, because a rising tide raises all boats. So if you want us all to look better, then like, why would you not want to support other people? Joe is in the chat saying that they love to hear this. As someone with a 13-year-old daughter, I'm constantly trying to help her support other girls and be a helper to her girlfriends. And it's not always easy, especially if maybe you are in direct competition with somebody, but by realizing that you need to treat them the way you wish they were treating you, right? If you wanted to see that support from people, then you need to show it to others as well. Jamie is also chiming in saying that toxic relationships are so draining, and it's such a time suck, right? Like imagine what else we could do with that energy if we weren't trying to like either keep one-upping people in that toxicity, or even just like stay afloat within it, right? It's definitely something I hope is kind of going away. I think it's the last vestiges of the professional aspect of like that cool girl mentality. Or like, well, I just get along better with guys. I work better with guys. Girls are just too much drama. No, we need to stop with all this. It's garbage. Yeah. All right. So we only have 3 minutes left. I'm so, thankful to everybody that, asked some really great questions. Before we leave though, I just want to highlight something for y'all. Let's see if we can get back here. Yeah. So Melissa, you had answered some questions for us about Netskope. You described the culture as genuine. Can you tell us a little bit about Netskope as a company, how they really reflect this culture, and why it's what makes the people your favorite part about Netskope?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've written a blog on this as well, but the culture at Netskope is amazing. It is transparent. And I do use the word genuine because nowadays we hear a lot about company culture and all of these buzzwords. So to be a part of a company that lives and breathes their values, and that the culture is driven from the top down and the bottom up, it is just this amazing, pervasive across the organization. And when I came into this, when I was I'm here only at Netskope only 8 months. So I also recently interviewed with the company, and I could feel it when I interviewed, and then when I got here, just how sincere the people are, how appreciative they are of your work. I mean, we just talked about the complete opposite. It is, really one of the best cultures I have worked in my career. You'll hear our CEO talk about this a lot because he means it and he cares about it, and we all do, because I do believe that culture starts at the top, but it really is also up to every single one of us. So that, and we're living it. So yeah, it is, the people are just phenomenal, and that genuineness is there.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So I do have a slide here about the open jobs at Netskope. Melissa, are there any details that you can add or tell us about some of these open roles, or maybe just tips for somebody who's applying?
Sure. So I will give a plug to my open role, which is the Global Partner Marketing Campaigns Manager, while I have the opportunity. To me, just general tip is to be prepared. So be prepared, know your story, know your pitch, practice it. It's important. So when you get there and you're interviewing with somebody, you're comfortable in kind of coming back to talking about the work that you're doing. So that's definitely one of my biggest tips is, make sure that you're preparing yourself and you're giving yourself enough time to do that too.
Computer looked like it froze there for a second. There we go. Okay, so sorry guys, my computer like panicked and did not want to let me unmute. So thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing that amazing information with us. And I've really enjoyed this afternoon of getting to talk to you about kind of how to advocate for yourself as well as grow your network. So I just want to extend a huge thank you to you for taking time to meet with us and share your experiences with our whole community. And hopefully the experience has been great for you as well.
It has. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you to all of you that joined. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to being a participant in listening in on additional events.
Absolutely. Thank you again to all of our amazing attendees. Y'all submitted some great questions at the start, before we started on today's session, and there were really awesome contributions in the chat as well as additional questions added. So thank you all so much for that. It makes these events that much more special. So huge thank you to all of you. I hope everybody has a wonderful Tuesday, and hopefully you'll join us for some of our upcoming events. We've got more chat and learns happening this week. Definitely check out the Netskope page. They've got some great stuff going on, so make sure you check that out. And don't forget to sign up for some of our icebreaker sessions. They're part of our virtual diversity reboot seminar that's happening in April 6th to the 9th. So have a great day, and hopefully I'll see many more of you on upcoming chats. Bye.
Thank you.